Okay, one more. I'm going to talk about Into the Spider-Verse. That's probably that for some reason got an Oscar over Incredibles 2 and Wreck-It Ralph to Ralph Breaks the Internet. Which, in my opinion, are better films, but who gives a fuck when the awards, when the Oscars says otherwise, right? As well as YouTube, the loudmouth dumbasses, critics on YouTube, child, adult, I don't care, women, men, who gives a fuck? If you can't tell by this review, I have developed a bit of a grudge towards this film. And I'm going to give this a title one. Why I have slowly started to develop a grudge. Or why I have a grudge towards this movie. Or it's going to be something like that. I just need to know if I can fit whatever the title is to me expressing my hatred. That being said, I do like this film. It's a 5 out of 10. It is average at the best, mediocre at the top, as in the best, which is mediocre of the top of the food chain, the mediocre top food chain. It is the best of the average for animated films, not for films in general though, because I think there are a lot better films than this. Like, Sandtrack. This movie, movie that barely has a budget, I think is more entertaining than Spider-Verse. I really don't want to talk about, part of me doesn't want to talk about Spider-Verse ever again. Part of me knows if I don't talk about it, then people won't ever shut the fuck up about praising it. And I hope, I can dream, while I can dream for a better future for Spider-Man in animated movies, because, oh my god, I'm actually really starting to wonder why I like this in the first place. There's just so much that I hate about this film, but there's like two elements that I really like about there's things that I like about the film. There's elements I like about the film, but I don't like how it feels like it feels like fucking the most overloaded convoluted amount of 16 filled films smashed together and merge. That just feels like these shouldn't go together, but somehow pull it off. But even though it sinks, and then it has the balls to tell you a message, but the message is a good message, but the thing is, the story's so predictable. It's like I'm not talking about the story with the other Spider people. I'm talking about Miles fucking Morales. I hate this little shit. I hate him in Spider-Verse. Not the Miles Morales from the comics or the video games or cartoon series, this particular version of Miles fucking Morales, I hate. Right down to his stupid haircut, his stupid bad fashion taste, his stupid smile, his stupid adult ass voice that's clearly at past puberty. Even before he gets the spider powers. Yeah, so can I say I hate him just based off of his looks? Well, I am going to do that, and I say because people judge this film based off of the looks of the animation, so why can't I do the opposite and turn that frown upside down and do the same thing for Miles Morales? Very bad design. I hate the design, but I don't hate it nearly as much as Noir Spider-Man's design with his stupid hat and stupid trench coat. You're Noir Spider-Man. What are you supposed to be, a detective? Since when is Noir Spider-Man a detective? And why is he voiced by Nicolas Cage? And most of these, and by most, I mean everyone except for Peter B. Parker and Peter Parker, who gets killed off in the film very early on. In the first, 15 minutes. After we get his backstory. And he says he loves being Spider-Man, even though all the times he's gone and beaten down, he's always found a way. Always gets back up. And he says and he loves being Spider-Man, and he doesn't know who wouldn't. And then we cut to Miles. He's running late to school because he stayed up all night doing artwork and listening to hip hop. And the soundtrack. So the soundtrack's the one thing I give a 10 out of 10. I would want the soundtrack to the Spider-Man film. So he walks, then he gets caught by his father because he saying hi to his old friends. That he doesn't, because he's forced to go to this new school where he doesn't have any friends. One night he sneaks out with his uncle to spray paint to do artwork, and ends up getting bit by a spider. The next day, overnight, he grows taller, and his voice gets deep. So he assumed that he hit puberty. That is a very logical conclusion, okay? Because he's not showing any spider powers yet. Then he, sure, he's talking to himself, and his voice in his head sounds very deep. Then he hears it out loud that it is that deep, and he doesn't know why he's so much taller overnight, and that his pants that he grew out of his pants and his shirt, so he figures this must be puberty. So that's a very logical conclusion, okay? Clever writing on that. Then this girl that he awkwardly flirts with, he flirts with her, and then he gets his hand stuck into his hair, and then he actually ends up having cut that piece off of his hair because of the spider powers that lets him stick to stuff and makes him all sticky and stuff and climbs walls. Then one of the gym teacher finds out that he's sneak out of school last night, and he's in trouble, so he decides to run his ass off. And, Miles, runs his ass off, and, completely in denial that he has Spider-Man powers, and trying to live in denial, saying he's just a normal kid. There can't be two Spider-Mans. So he's flipping through a Spider-Man origin comic from the Silver. His first, when he's flipping through a Spider-Man comic of tells that Peter's origin stories, and yet the world's shocked that Peter Parker and Spider-Man are the same thing when he gets killed off. When there's stores in this universe that sell car books of Peter Parker's Spider-Man for this universe. This is weird. And then later the same thing happens to Miles once he fully embraces his destiny as still like a competent Spider-Man through belief, even in himself. Through the inspiring words of his father, he will become a simple icon just like Superman. And in the last 15 minutes, after spying words from his father, Jor-El, or should we say Black Al? Yeah, because his father's black. Oh god, that sounds stupid. Oh yeah, his father's a cop, and for some reason, unexplained reason, he doesn't get along with his brother anymore. Now, well, it was explained in the comics and in the video games, or at least hinted at in Miles Morales' video game universe, and the cartoon shows that he made of Benson. It was expected to care, but we don't know why his father doesn't get along and doesn't approve of his uncle's behavior and life choice. Even when he seems like a perfectly functioning, stable dude, that's actually nice, maybe even a better person than his dad. Oh my god. I think his dad's jealous that he seems a nicer person and knows how to talk to a kid, unlike his own father. Miles' father. Wow. Miles' dad, you're a real true cop. Please rape the kid. Miles Morales. Because isn't that what cops are supposed to do? Apply the law by taking the law into their own hands and abusing it. Well, technically doesn't do that, but I think that's my knowledge what normal cops do. Normally, traditionally. So, yeah, he's not a normal cop, he plays it by book. Doesn't write in red lights, not even for emergencies. Because he's a so legit cop, and even some cops do that, but not your old man. As he's driving Miles to school as Cruiser. Then he says, "I love you, son," and then he actually embarrassed Miles and says, "You gotta say back, Miles, say it back, fine. Dad, I love you." It is funny. It is funny. Even though he's very hard on Miles, you can tell he deeply cares about him. And, in the last 15 minutes, he gets a hold of knowing how to control every one of his powers and escapes the webs of the Spider-Man from the multiverse. And woman. Just one. No, two. And, well, Spider-Girls, because they're minors, so, yeah, same thing, though. In the last 15 minutes of the film, they all web him up and ditch him because he's doesn't know how to do shit with his powers. So rather than breaking into him nicely, they decide to just web him up like dicks and abandon him and not give him any escape route, because he's going to be like that for an hour. An hour in those webs. Because in the comic book lore and in every adaptation, the webs dissolve after an hour. So he's going to be in that at least an hour, and it's just like they didn't think this. I don't think they thought him through. They webbed him to a chair, and locked him out in his room and stuff. And then his father comes to see him and explains that his uncle's dead. He thought that Spider-Man did it, which was Miles Spider-Man that he saw that thought did it. Now after seeing him, now he's not so sure. So for some reason, he second-guessed himself out of nowhere, because the script says so. Oh. And Gwen Stacy is a spider, has Spider-Man powers, go by the name Spider-Gwen. The ones that Miles has crush on, she's actually from another multiverse. Oh god, this is so much to take in. And when it explains to you the whole multiverse, every time, when they ever explain to introduce you each Spider-Person, they get a backstory. And it's like flipping through a comic book on fast forward, except for Spider B. Parker and Miles Morales and Peter Parker that died in the first 15 minutes of the film. Because it's like they're the only ones that really pour into the story. Here's a thought. Why don't you just cut everyone out of the film? Gwen, Noir, Spider-Man, and the Chinese girl with the robot that's best friends with the robot, the spider robot, and save them for their own shine in the spotlight. And it's hard to breathe in this film. So much is going on. What's going on? And now the Kingpin wants his family back, and the only reason why this whole thing happened is because Spider-Man interfered and broke the machine that sends people from another dimensions. He kind of busted it by accident while getting into a fight with Scorpion, and she gets killed off after his last words to Kingpin says, "I know what you're trying to do. You're never going to do it. They're never coming back." And Kingpin just steps on Spider-Man's skull, and that's how he dies on screen. And but that's one from Miles' Earth in the multiverse, the Spider-Verse. And that's when the whole tragedy kicks off, and for a good 20 fucking minutes at least, it is nothing but Miles fooling himself, thinking he can be Spider-Man without training. Because he's too scared to train. Because he needs a tutor to hold his hand as he cries into his pillow. He just needs his own spider body to hold his little his little teenage arm at every moment and encourage and say, giving him positive reinforcements while lying to his face that he can do it. Because that's exactly what Peter Parker that got killed off was planning to do. Oh my God. And eventually, he would have succeeded. But if we did that, if it went down that road, we would have had it somehow even worse a film than we got. That's dumber. Somehow it wouldn't be as convoluted, but we'd be dumber. So. And then, after roughly 20 minutes at least passed in the film, while the world's grieving over Peter Parker, Miles goes to Peter's grave, then gets caught by the cops. After he kind of assaults a hobo that looks suspiciously like Peter Parker. Turns out it is him, from another dimension. Instead of being in his early 20s, like the one that died, 23 exactly, he's 39. Or 38, I think he's 39. He's in his late 30s. He's depressed, doesn't care anymore about the whole hero thing, but still does it. Afraid to move on. Afraid to take the next chapter of his life of growing up, of having a kid. Therefore, 15 years later, after he saved the city many times, that he regrets saving it that many times. He said himself, because it probably was too many times to him. And he mentioned how he broke his back once while saving the city, and then 15 years later, down the road, he buries his Aunt May 6 feet underground, attends their her funeral wake, right next to Uncle Ben, that died when he was 15 years old. And got divorced from MJ, known as Mary Jane in the comics, not just as a red girl that has white color skin in the comics and in every adaptation outside Tom Holland's run. She divorced him because he said he didn't want kids. And he's rendering, and he's carrying a severe amount of understandable guilt of hurting her feelings while watching TV and eating junk food and lounging around in his costume in his own apartment while eating junk food and watching TV. And occasionally saving the whole superheroes, doing the whole superheroes, stopping crime and stuff. And he made bad money investments and told the audience never invested into a Spidey. He invested into some sort of Spidey restaurant, and it backfired. He went bankrupt because of it. So he's now a little low on money now. Worse than ever because of his bad financial decisions. Because bad betting decisions in terms of financial stuff. Instead of doing something, making a betting decision that was going to help him and maybe help him support his wife and himself better, it ended up doing the opposite. And not only that, he said no about having kids, he feels guilty, and he has a 5 o'clock show Probably hasn't shaved in a few days, I'm guessing. And we see him also, it gets worse. He has the costume on and crying while eating pizza when the shower's on. and he even cries himself to sleep. And he's in one day he decides when he gets zapped is into Miles' dimension is the day he decides to try to get back in shape by doing crunches and eating pizza. Then he gets zapped in the teleporter while wearing his mask and while putting his, and then not before he puts his mask on in the process. And but somehow loses his boots. Yet he has them in the last 15 minutes of the film. His spider boots that he wears on his feet. I don't know why. Consistency of inconsistency. You're really questioning the logic in this film called Spider-Verse. Really? How stupid are you? Consistency doesn't matter. This is a movie. We don't need to think. We don't need to give a shit about these characters. And the only one I'm giving shit is about Peter B. Parker that got sapped into Miles' dimension.